All right, we're going to start lesson 4, graphing linear equations using x and y intercepts. So let's get out our guided notes and get started. So to graph a linear equations, given only the equation, right? So you're going to see on these, you'll see equations and some graphing, but that's it, okay? So how are you going to then figure out what that equation looks like on the line, right? And to do that, then we need to find where the lines cross at the x and y axis, and this is called the x and y intercept. And I just drew all over my line. X and y intercept. All right, where they intercept, where they cross through those points on a line, all right? And then the coordinates of each point where the line crosses the y axis has a y value of 0, okay? So we're gonna say whatever's through the y is gonna have a value of 0, and then we're gonna substitute that value of 0 in for our equation, okay? And then we'll be able to solve for x, and then that will then give us the x-intercept, okay? So last lesson you went over, like, we just picked different points, remember, for x to find y. Now we're gonna put 0 in for y, because the line's got to cross the y-intercept. So this line, there's got to be a line that crosses it somehow, some way, right? So that's how we can put in 0 and just see what comes up with x if it were 0 on the line, okay? So the converse is true then to find the coordinates of the x-axis, okay? The coordinates of each point where the line crosses the y-axis has an x value of 0. So then we can substitute the value of 0 for x and then solve for y. And then that will give us the y-intercept. So all we're going to do is replace our x's and y's with zeros to help us actually find the opposite of whatever they are, all right? All right, so with us replacing the x and the y intercepts, we'll be able to then actually get 2 points on this eventually, okay? So the first one we're going to do is we are going to replace y with 0. So we're going to say y equals 0 for this first one to give us what the x-intercept is, okay? So I rewrote my equation as 5x minus 3y, we said is 0. Once again, I'm just replacing this y equals 15. So now I'm just going to solve for x. So 5 and x are hanging out, so I can't do anything there. Well, then what's 3 times a 0 would be 0, right? And then I get 15. Now you're like, that's a negative 0. Okay, well, let's add the 0 to both sides. What do we get? Nothing. So I get 5x equals 15. All right, then once there, I divide by 5. Divide by 5, x equals 3. So our first point on the graph was, though, coming back to this, though, y equals 0. And remember, it goes x then y when we point on a graph. And we just said x equals 3. So 1 point on our graphs is 3, 0. Okay, now let's find our next point that'll then give us the line. So now we've had y equals 0. Now we're going to have x equals 0. So with our equation, rewriting it, 5 times x, and x is now 0, minus 3y. We don't put in the y that we just found. We're trying to find 2 different points, okay? So we're not going to put in that number. That wouldn't really make sense for this right now. So we are going to now solve for y. So we solved for x, now we're solving for y. Well, 5 times 0 is just 0, right? So nothing happens there besides we get the negative 3y equals 15. Remember, the sign in front of it needs to stay with it. We have 3 times y, so we're going to divide by a negative 3. Don't forget those negative signs, it'll mess it all up. Y then equals a negative 5. So this is our point in our y, and we said x was 0. So here's our other point, 0, negative 5. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and go graph those. So we have 3, 0, and 0, negative 5. So let's write those again. 3, 0, and then 0, negative 5. Okay? Make sure you're pausing if you need to get all your notes down. All right, so let's graph these, and now we can see what our graph looks like. So we're going to go over 3, but stay on the 0. That's our first point. And then we have 0, and we're going to go down negative 5. So from here, do my best to draw myself a little line, and I can now see my graph. That's not a great line. Like I said, I'm not very good at drawing these lines, okay? But from there, then, I can use that equation, this equation, when on a graph, looks like this. All right, let's look at this again, okay? So using this equation to then find our x and y intercepts. So our first one we're gonna say y equals 0. So then we're gonna solve for x, okay? So 6x minus 5, 0 is now in place of y equals 30. 6x, nothing's happened to that yet. 5 times a 0 would be nothing. But I do want to have that negative there. Just, I don't have to, but I want to make sure we understand that. We still want to get rid of that sign, okay? And now it's all gone. Equals 30, okay? And I have 6x, so multiplying, so we're going to divide by 6. And then x equals 5. So my first point on this graph, and I'm going to do it up here, we have y is 0, x is 5. So we have 5, 0 is one of our points, okay? Now moving to the next one, we're going to say x equals 0. So let's look at our equation. We have 6 times 0, because x is replacing it, minus 5y, leaving y in there. We're trying to solve for y now. Well, 6 times 0 is 0, but don't forget that's a negative 5y equals 30. Don't forget your negatives. So since it's multiplying by a negative 5, I'm going to divide by a negative 5. And y equals a negative 6. So the next points here are 0 and negative 6. So then I can go up here. 0, negative 6 are for my graph point, right? Make sure you're getting down all your notes. So let's go mark these, okay? So we have over 5 and at the 0. I'm going to zoom in a little better so I can make a better dot. 0, 5, 0, and then we have 0, negative 6. And sorry, that's not on the line. Do my best to draw through. That was a little better than the last one. And there is now my graph and chart for this equation is right over here, right? All we're doing is replacing y's and x's with zeros. All right, let's start our last one. So same concept, we gotta graph this equation, and how to do so, I've gotta replace my x and y. So y equals 0 for the first one. So we have 2x minus 8 times 0 equals 24. Solving for x now, we gotta leave 2x alone. We get negative 0, which is nothing, so we'll get rid of it this time. But understanding that, make sure those negatives carry if you need them. Divide by 2, x equals 12. So my first point on this first graph is 12, 0. Remember, x comes first, then y. And then now let's replace x is going to equal 0. So I have 2 times 0 minus 8y, and we're going to solve for y. 2 times 0 is nothing, so we bring down the negative 8y equals 24. Divide by negative 8, divide by negative 8. Y equals negative 3. So our next point is we've got 0, negative 3. 0, negative 3. All right, now from there, let's go graph our points. And I wish we had different charts for us, so I apologize about that. We have 0, 12. Oh boy, that's gonna be all the way over here, isn't it? Probably even further than that, but that's okay. And then I have 12, 0. I worded that wrong. 12, 0, not 0, 12. Now I have 0, negative 3. And then we will go ahead and try my best to connect my lines. There we go, not too bad. All right. So once again, all you're doing is replacing y with 0, then x with 0, using these points then, give me a different color, to then give me a graph of what that equation looks like. So go ahead and head to your assignment and get started on lesson 4.